Hello everyone, this is update for May 27, 2024, day 824 of the war, and of the date update also catch up for May 26 and 25. So as promised, I'm resuming slowly but surely review of what's going on economy-wise. As I mentioned before, that's the basis for the war. So that's the most important part, and I'm obviously focusing on macroeconomy, not focusing on individual companies. So I'm going to start with the UK, and the reason I'm starting it because there is a political change coming there, and specifically UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced snap elections on July 4th, and I believe the reason is driven largely by the economic situation, which is becoming pretty ugly in the UK, slowly but surely. And the reason I'm gonna, it's happening is it's not perfectly in these numbers, but it gives you a good idea of what's going on there. So the the consumer, the average person in the UK is getting hit from two sort of main sides. First of all, the housing prices, basically prices for houses, resuming their move up. So as you can see, 0.6%, so it's going up. The inflation is still pretty high in the UK, especially core CPI, which is more sort of durable in nature. That's not volatile. It's almost 4%. The most sort of volatile part, and it's probably driven more by temporarily blips, such as drop in fuel prices. So similar things. It dropped to 2.3, but the key one is this one, 3.9, which remains, as you can see, pretty high. A significant part of it is probably housing, also services. So again, this is obviously going to be negative for the average consumer. The economy is also kind of like slightly above negative, as you can see. Services side of the economy clearly going down to 53 from 55. Manufacturing actually slightly rebounded, but overall the picture is pretty muddy, and I would say there is not much going on. It's basically treading water around zero. Just for those who knew, the key here for this PMI numbers is 50. Above 50, it's growing. Below 50, it's shrinking. So, and the economy can be viewed from two key components: service and manufacturing. And manufacturing can be also split into more, but basically those are two main parts. Most Western countries have significant part in service, so they very important. However, this is the most important and key numbers. So as you can see, core retail sales and retail sales went down by 3 and 2.7% respectively year on year. That's very painful reduction in the standard of living of average person in the UK. And this is not just one off. This has been going on. I actually, when I was still reporting these numbers, it was similar, plus minus. So this is consistent downward trend that's been going on for a while. And especially why it's important, because this is just nominal prices. So if you take into account inflation, so the hit is actually, if we take 3.9 or 2.3, So the hit is actually much harsher, roughly 5 to 6% reduction in the standard of living for average person. And if this has been going on for some time, the effectively real standard of living is going down quite significantly in the UK, even though nominal GDP is actually went slightly up. So this is the whole sort of, let's say, tricky part to understand what's really happening, because GDP is quantity Q times price, right? So that's a GDP. So and we all really care about quantity, right? So we don't really care about price so much, because we consume, let's say, I don't know, butter, right? Or we consume meat, or we consume something else, whatever else consume. We're not consuming, 10 pounds pieces of paper. So who cares if butter costs uh, 10 pounds? I'm just making things up. Right now, 1 kilogram, uh, and if it's costs, let's say, 5 pounds per kilogram, obviously, all I care is that I can consume, and if I have 10 pounds, that means I can consume 2 kilograms of butter. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that really the most important part is quantity, which reflects quality of life and consumption, not the prices. And as you can see, if we because CPI and the sales, so CPI really reflects the price side of the equation, right? And so you can see that uh, if you include both the because retail sales, these are price times quantity. So this is cumulative number, combination of both. But if you also add to that additional sort of price component, then you're getting towards the sort of more cleaner situation in terms of quantity. Not perfect, but in this case, the summary is that things are getting mm, pretty bad for average person in the UK. And that's really the driver probably for the snap elections, because the Conservative Party lost, I believe, the local elections, and the preference is to save whatever they can save in terms of seats, because they clearly understand that things are probably going to get worse. So they want to fix the status quo that's not favorable, but then they also realize things probably gonna get worse. So and then then it's turning into political game of, if things gonna get worse, then if other party is in power, they're gonna be blamed. But in reality, the inertia and how the economy works is that things that were done, let's say, a year ago, a couple years ago, they are being, sort of reflected right now. And all of this, what's going on, and probably, if there is party change, whatever is going to be happening till at least end of the year is a result of the current party. And I'm not supporting either party. For me, they sort of party A and B. I don't see really much of a difference between the two parties. So all I'm trying to explain is that there is just political game being played between the parties, and that's all. But the summary is that the standard of living in the UK is sinking insignificantly, and probably it's painful there. Um, and that's what I said many times before. That's a result of the war on conventional energy. That's the price of attempting to build that something that's not real. so-called green energy, which is completely not green, and the things will get the most sort of, I would say, probably depressing part is that things will probably gonna get worse. They're not gonna go. They're not gonna get better um, until those policy mistakes are reversed. So, and given that the is saying the potential winner, the other party, I think it's Labor Party, they unlikely to reverse those policy mistakes that were done by Conservative Party. So things are gonna get worse and probably gonna get much uglier under Labor Party, and then it probably will snap back to Conservative Party, which at some point, hopefully, there is a circuit breaker where someone will sort of say, "Well, we need to change." But so far, it doesn't. There's no. I would say there's no light at the end of the tunnel for the UK. Um, that's that's all about the economy for today, and I'm gonna be continuing adding things for other Western economies in China and to extend Russia. Even though I mentioned before that Russian statistical numbers are extremely unreliable, and to be fair, Chinese as well. But uh, given the war, Russia's are the worst. Now let's actually talk a little bit about China. And I decided to. I spoke last video about the jet fighters from the 70s, Soviet ones, which is Su-27, MiG-29, and then US ones, F equivalents, basically mirror equivalents, F-15 and F-16. Uh, so I would like to extend that conversation to China because China is actually employing a large fleet of effectively Soviet Su-27 that were modernized, improved, and so on. So it starts with J-11, which is essentially just a Su-27, I think some modernized version. Then there is J-15, another improved version, and then the most advanced one is J-16. But at the core, they all Su-27 airplanes. Was I would say notable difference is J-16, which has uh, pretty advanced avionics, very comparable to F-16, which really then makes it effectively better airplane than F-16. But as you can see, the numbers, how many Chinese military has it, is really not that much. It's only, at least that's what is being reported. Roughly 250 J-16, then 60 plus J-15, and 450 of J-11. So that's really not big number, especially if you compare the total number of F-16 that were manufactured, even if there is only half in existence right now, and most of them in the Western world, it's still 2.3 thousand aircraft that's out there. Also, I spoke a while ago, probably more than a year, about this J-20. There is also J-31. So far, it looks like China manufactured 250 plus of those, and then they have a fleet of J-10, which is even like worse, older, roughly 600 of those, and that's a really poor copy of F-16 without the quality avionics. So essentially, that's really garbage. So what really China has is I would say totally not that many jet airplanes, or the ones that are comparable, similar to what the U.S. has just alone. And if you include Japan, South Korea, they probably outnumber China in terms of these jet fighter airplanes. And then, if you remember also from a long time ago, I looked at their aircraft carriers of the US and China. And I mentioned that China has roughly three aircraft carriers. One is still being almost finished building. US has like 10 or 11. Uh, the other two Chinese ones are pretty, I would say, not modern, more sort of Soviet versions. So really, China doesn't have that much of aircraft carriers. Now I mentioned that they don't have that many jet aircraft. If you look this at all of this combined, I would say that chances of China attacking Taiwan are probably not that high, at least from a rational perspective. Uh, I would say it's fairly suicidal attempt, unless obviously all of the West backs out and it's just Taiwan versus China. In that case, obviously, China eventually will prevail, but it's not going to be easy walk either. So it doesn't just purely from, as I mentioned, just equipment to equipment basis. It doesn't look like China is that ready for the attack. Um, at the same time, for example, Japan was not ready at all to attack US in 1941, yet they did, because again, it was going back to economy, and they were cut off from the supply of crude oil, which eventually means that the economy will implode, and it's meant destruction of the entire economy. So it's in a way was desperation move. Don't know if China. I don't feel that China is there. It's certainly having a lot of economic problems, but they are not that desperate of the nature in nature, and so this, I would say, it would be very logical. It still may happen, but that would be, I would say, as I stated, a logical move from China, and they do happen. Uh, but uh, but looking at the sort of balance of power, balance of equipment, China clearly doesn't have strong advantage. Where they do have advantage are missiles. That's undisputed, and they have, I would say, I mentioned before, better quality than, let's say, West and US in particular. So that's the only advantage. But at the same time, attacking with single advantage is also not terribly wise. In terms of nuclear capabilities, China is definitely behind US by much, and definitely behind Russia by much. So again, that's not going to be in play by any means. So that really leaves China with not that really much of advantage, with exception obviously population wise, but that's just not. I don't think that's going to be the key sort of in this situation. So again, looking at all of this, I would say I would be increasingly skeptical that China would imminently attack Taiwan just purely from logical perspective. Again, could happen, could be wrong because there are some other political considerations and so on, and economical ones. But just purely from this, that's the picture. Now let's look at another switching topics, but it's actually related to nuclear capabilities. Ukraine attacked one of the Russian radar stations, actually Soviet really built during Soviet time. It's called Voronezh. That's a radar station, and the purpose of this radar stations are detecting nuclear attacks using ballistic missiles, obviously against Russia. So basically, it's an early detection tool to detect attack with nuclear attack against Russia. So as you can see, it appears there is a damage to one of these raiders, and the one that's particularly shown here is the one in Armavir. Here, it's a Krasnodar Krai of Russia. Then the Ukraine attempted to attack another one in Orsk. That one is clearly not successful. Again, here I cannot estimate, understand true damage. It does look like there's a damage. Nobody truly knows to what extent they damaged, how quickly they can be repaired, and so on. But the fact is, it appears there is some damage. That's obviously very concerning for Russia, and this um, is actually very dangerous because it could be trigger for some form of retaliation, including using some, let's say, tactical nuclear weapons. I don't think it's still low probability, but it's as close as it gets so far in terms of eliciting very harsh response from Russia. Probably, I would say. And obviously it's bringing danger situation much closer and potentially unnecessarily so. Then I'm gonna switch a little bit to other topics related to Russia, and in terms of just to show there is a continuing escalation in relationship between Russia and the West. So, Polish government announced that Russian embassy workers they are not allowed to freely travel throughout Poland. So each employee will be limited only to travel in the region where that they serve. Uh, Basically, they cannot go to other region and so on. So this move is driven by the fact that Poland is stating that Russian embassy workers are involved in sabotage actions in Poland. Basically, they're not directly involved, but they are coordinating those sabotage actions in Poland, and so they're trying to sort of preemptively or reduce their capabilities. Let's put this way. So that's all in terms of general news, general updates. And I'm now going to switch finally to the situation in Ukraine, and more specifically to the situation on the battleground in Ukraine. In a summary, I would say that things have not changed much. So far, it does feel that Russia has run out of the fuel in terms of their attack against Kharkiv, which I mentioned before. There was not much of resources. At least uh, there's there's no reason to believe that Russia has enough to capture Kharkiv, so they were stopped so far. Uh, there are reports that they are massing another similar group to attack Sumy region, which is north of Kharkiv. So basically, this is Kharkiv region, this is Sumy, and northeastern part of Ukraine, somewhere between Sumy and Kharkiv. Again, this is probably similar in size group. So again, its ability will be limited, but it's all also driven by the situation on the Ukrainian side on in terms of reserves and in terms of enough brigades to plug the hole, basically, and that's really where the question is. But the attacking forces from the Russian side, they are not large in size. They're not strategically significant, let's put this way. It's more of a tactical, large scale tactical attacks rather than anything strategic. At least so far, that's what's been going on. So now let's jump to this Kharkiv region, and the situation essentially remains the same. Russian troops are fiercely attacking towards Lipsy. There is a there is there's a hill south east of Lipsy that essentially control that. That's really what the fight is going on, not exactly for the village, because whoever controls those that hill is effectively uh, then controlling this whole distance towards Kharkiv, because then it's a commanding height, and so that's really what the fight is going on there for. So far, Russian troops are far away from capturing it, and given this current situation, I'm not even sure that they will ever do that, giving them the balance of power. Similar situation in the Kupyansk region. It's clear that Russian troops bogged down. They are not capable of advancing more. Actually, I have a little bit of information how this whole collapse happened, and it's actually, let's say, it's a failure at multiple levels on the Ukrainian side. So first of all, the defensive positions were created in completely wrong locations without consulting military. So it was basically done by the so-called military civilian administration, and they don't coordinate. They seem like working in vacuum. So they don't have expertise. So frequently they build those positions at the bottom of the valleys, basically at depression, which is, you becoming perfect target, and it's useless. Then, despite knowing that the Russian troops are about to attack, Ukrainian command in this area put very the 125th Brigade, which is not regular military brigade, but it's a territorial defense brigade. What this really means is they don't have any heavy equipment, no cannons, no tanks, no nothing. Essentially, it's just light arms, just infantry arms, some mortars, but that's it. They are not, these brigades are not equipped uh, to withstand Russian troops. They simply sort of artifact of the initial phase of the war. It should have been probably merged into as reserves, as replenishment into regular military brigades, or converted to regular military brigades. But they are completely not capable let's say, successful defensive operation. I'm not even talking offensive operations, just simply successful defensive operations are impossible with these brigades. On top of it, this brigade was only at 50% of its strength. So this really means that roughly it was stretched. Basically, there are two battalions of it, and those two battalions were stretched across roughly 40-kilometer front. They have also attached another two more battalions from completely standalone. So again, there's no proper communication, no coordination between original two plus those two. It's a ragtag situation where you know this is there's not a cohesive unit. It's just something has been thrown to sort of basically be on the border, but completely not battle capable. In addition, actually, Russian troops managed to jam Ukrainian communication for about 24 hours. So there was on top of it chaos because there is no ability. Well, that this Ukrainian army is not capable of um, of commanding its troops without Starlink or even Motorola radios. So, in both of those were jammed for roughly 24 hours. That creates, I would say, chaos, and where troops started retreating, especially since they weaker than Russian troops. Also, there were no anti-infantry mines. But there were, let's say, 5% out of what needs to be. So it's total disaster in summary. And the fact that Russian troops only managed to advance, I would say, this much is actually a miracle. And then after that, Ukrainian command started to throw whatever they can. Even the brigades that were sort of resting, being rebuilt, that they not finished rebuilding, so they were starting throwing them to the battlefield to stop this Russian advance, which was eventually was stopped, but as you can see, it was completely disastrous action. And the more important part is that apparently this has been known to Ukrainian command, and there was time to act. It's not, it wasn't, like snow in the summer. It was snow in the middle of the winter. So totally expected and totally detected Russian troops on the other build up. Yet was uh, reaction, or I would say lack of reaction by Ukrainian command. Um, so this is a situation in Vovchansk area. As I mentioned, Russian troops at this point control core of the town, which is the north of this Vovcha river. Now let's move to the situation on the North Luhansk front line. Things here are more or less the same, except Russian troops managed to capture village Ivanivka here in this area, so they slowly but surely advancing. They continue pressuring in this Serebransky forest without much of advance there. The most of the advance is here south east of Kupyansk. Now let's move to the situation on North Donbass front line. Russian frontal pressure in the direction of Siversk continues without much success so far. Um, that's I would say it for this area. Then in the southern sector, Russian troops are continuing their, I would say, frontal attack towards Chasiv Yar. They are not able to build the northern pincer, or at least it's not coming anytime close. So effectively, Russian troops are kind of stuck in terms of they do this frontal attack against Chasiv Yar. They made some advance in the part of the town that's actually on the eastern side of this channel, which really not is the town. Town is really on the western side. It actually has some distance from them, from this channel. So it's really kind of like outskirts, and the fighting is happening there. So they I would say for now they stuck, they bogged down. Eventually, giving the pressure, things will start working for in Russia's favor. But it's again, there's no imminent chance of capturing Chasiv Yar. Now let's move to the situation to the let's move to the central Donbass front line. Things here also somewhat sort of stuck without major Russian advances. I wouldn't say that the front line is stable. It's just for now there is a balance of power. And as I stated before, in the war of attrition, this is losing strategy for Ukraine, because eventually this balance will tilt in the Russians' favor after attrition on the Ukrainian side, except the Russian side has replacement. and so the front line will move in the western direction. But so far, Russian troops were not successful anywhere here. Um, then there is a pressure, Russian continuous pressure in this Krasnohorivka area and west of Marinka. Russian troops continuing going through Krasnohorivka. Are they coming towards the sort of end of it? Not yet, but it's sort of the major obstacles seems to be over in terms of capturing Krasnohorivka, and then we'll see what happens. So, what this really means that Krasnohorivka probably will fall in a week or two, and then we'll go from there. We'll see what happens next because it's going to be much more difficult terrain for Ukrainian forces to hold on to because obviously urban areas are easier generally to defend. Then the situation south of Krasnohorivka is fairly stuck. There's no really meaningful Russian advances there. Now let's look at the situation on the Zaporizhya front line. There's only Russian pressure in this Urozhaine Staromayorsk area. The Russian troops are making small advances, 100 meters, so on. Essentially, there's not much going on here. It's not the major area of sort of application of resources by Russian command. The same is true from Robotin. There's not even meaningful attacks to mention about there. Now let's finish with the situation along the Dnipro River. So things are still not 100% clear what's going on with Krenki. It seems like the bridgehead was eliminated, but there is no, I would say, 100% confirmation from either side. So for now, I would say there's still some question mark in terms of if there are any Ukrainian troops on the eastern side of the Dnipro River. Sounds like there is none, but I cannot confirm it for sure. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Bye bye.